Okay, today we're going to be talking about the legislative branch of our government. Up here I have just our three branches of government: legislative, executive, and judicial. And as I've stated before and will keep on stating, our legislative branch is our Congress, our executive branch is the president and vice president and his cabinet, and the judicial branch is our federal courts, and at the very top of that, our Supreme Court. But today we're going to be talking about the legislative branch, or Congress. Either term is fine. All right. Legislative branch, or the Congress, is laid out in Article 1 of the United States Constitution. Our Constitution is a living document that is kind of a blueprint for our government and its policies. Because it was in Article 1 and the longest article of the Constitution, you can kind of infer that our founding fathers thought it should be the most important branch of government. It's supposed to be the will of the people. The main purpose of the legislative branch, as you probably know, is to create laws and amend our Constitution. The legislative branch, the Congress, is one way to amend the Constitution. State legislators can too, but the Congress is our main tool for amending our Constitution. Now, when the Founding Fathers created the Constitution, one of the main issues was whether or not our Congress was going to be representative based on state population or not. And the compromise they came up with was called the Virginia Compromise, and that laid out a bicameral Congress. And we have a bicameral Congress. It's two houses, the House of Representatives and the Senate. The House of Representatives is based on population. So the bigger the state population-wise, the more representatives they have. The Senate is not. Each state has two senators. All right, first we're going to talk about the House of Representatives. Our House of Representatives has 435 members. Up until 1929, every time a state was added to the Union, we added representatives as well in the House. So from the founding of our country up until the early 1900s, our representatives were increasing by number. But in 1929, that was capped at 435, just so things didn't get too complicated. And as I stated earlier, the House of Representatives is based on population of each state. So each state has a different number of representatives based on how many people live in that state. Minnesota has 8 representatives and 2 senators. So we have 8 congressional representative districts in our state. And we'll look at those on the map at the end. The state with the most representatives is California at 53, because they have the largest population in the Union. But there are also a few states like Montana, South Dakota, North Dakota, I think Idaho, all just have 1 representative because their population is under 800 or 700,000. So if you want to be a representative and represent your state in our National Congress, you must be at least 25 years old. You must have been a U.S. citizen for 7 consecutive years. And you must be a resident of the state you want to represent at the time of the election. You don't necessarily have to live in the district you want to represent, but you do have to live in the state. Representatives, they're up for re-election every 2 years. So if you're a representative and you are serving in the House, every 2 years you're at jeopardy of losing your seat. So you need to make sure you are listening to your people, your constituents, and making sure you are running a good campaign every 2 years. Since you have to get reelected every 2 years, and you don't need to be too terribly old. The House of Representatives is meant to be a younger, more volatile House, meaning they kind of shift with changes pretty rapidly. They pay attention to what their voters want and try and do what they can to get reelected, which means listening to the voters or constituents. So each state, let's talk about the Senate first of all. Each state has 2 senators, and instead of representing a single district, each senator represents the entire state. And there are a total of 100 senators in the Senate because we have 50 states. Both senators represent the whole state, not just a district, which I just talked about. Some of the limitations to be a senator: you must be 30 years old, so a little older than a representative. Need to be a citizen for at least 9 consecutive years, and you must reside in the state you want to represent. And just at the time of the election. There's no certain limitation on how long you would have to live in that state. You could move to Iowa tomorrow and run in this fall's election. Senators are up for election every 6 years, and every 2 years, a third of the Senate is up for re-election, so they're staggered. The Senate is meant to be an older, less volatile House of Congress. They don't have to run for re-election as often as the House of Representatives does. And you're a little older, supposed to be a little wiser. You would have to have been a citizen for a little longer. It's harder to become a senator, and the Senate is expected to be a less volatile lawmaker. It doesn't change with the wind as much as the House does. Okay, so here is Minnesota State's congressional district map. Our 2 senators are Tina Smith and Amy Klobuchar. And Amy Klobuchar ran for president this year but did not make it, and she dropped out already, so we don't have to worry about her leaving. And Tina Smith took over for Al Franken when Al Franken resigned 2 years ago. So Tina Smith and Amy Klobuchar, they don't look over a single district. They are in charge of all of Minnesota. I live in District 3, so my House of Representative is Dean Phillips. Some of you live in Elk River. If you live in Elk River or Zimmerman, you're in District 6, and Tom Emmer is your rep. So, like I said, this is my district, District 3. And Dean Phillips is my representative. And if you live in Elk River, this is your district, District 6. And your representative is Tom Emmer. However, if you're a senator, you're supposed to represent all of this, all of Minnesota. All right, so that's it about the Congress, and there will be another screencast about the powers of Congress coming up.